In this video, I'm going to show you the exact method we use to build lead lists inside Apollo. If you don't know who I am, I'm Romain Osman. I co-founded 5element, and over the past year, we've generated over 1,000 sales appointments for B2B companies using cold email and LinkedIn outreach. Now I will switch over to my laptop and walk you through the platform. So here's the platform. In this video, I'm going to show you the prospect and unreached part of Apollo, because that's where we're going to be able to source leads. So I'm going to talk about people, companies, and lists. Apollo is also an email sequencer and does a lot of different things. But today we're just going to talk about how to source leads on Apollo, because that's the only way we use it. So as you can see, there are 217 million leads and there are more than 30 million companies. So there are two ways to source leads on Apollo. Either you start with companies, you add your filters. So that way you know how many companies are in your target audience. And then you click on people and you just add the job titles. Because sometimes you discover that if you start with people, you will see that you have 100,000 people that you can contact. But then you notice that they're only from 3,000 companies because there are just 20, 50 people in the same company. Another reason why we could start with companies is because sometimes you want to have another layer to filter out bad leads. So you can export, for example, 10,000 companies and then use AI to remove the companies that are not a fit for you. And then you import the best fit companies in people. I'm going to show you how after. And this way you avoid contacting people that are not in your target audience. But today, I'm just going to talk about the filters in people. Either way, they're almost the same, because I'm going to show you that because most of the times, that's how you're going to source leads, because it's easier and in most cases, it makes more sense like that. So I will walk you through every filter that is relevant. You're probably not going to have the same order of filters because that's something you can customize. And so I changed a bit the order, but you're going to have all of them. So the first one is lists. So when you're going to save leads to be able to export them, you're going to save them in lists. And here there is a filter where you can choose to show only the people that are in your list. But it's mainly useful in this case for companies. For example, you have a list of companies that you exported from another tool and you can import them in Apollo to be able to source the contacts that you want. The maximum per list is 10,000 companies, I think. So when you import 50,000 companies, they're going to be in 5 different lists and you can select them here. Now I'm going to talk about this filter because it's related to list a bit. Here you can either select companies one by one manually. So this filter doesn't necessarily make any sense. But here you have include, exclude list of companies. So sometimes you don't have a list of 50,000 companies. You just have 5,000, for example. And so in that case, it's easier to import the URL here, just copy paste. But if you have a long list, you have to import them on the platform and select the list, because here you can't import more than, I think, around 7,000 URLs. Also, still in companies, here you can exclude a list of companies. So it's mainly for your current clients that you don't want to contact. Then we have persona. That's not something that we personally use. Here I have a bunch, but we don't use them anymore. It's basically like you can basically create persona based on job titles, company size, location, etc. If every time you contact the same kinds of people, you can create personas and avoid every time adding the, as I said, company size, etc. Not really useful, but it's here. Then we have job titles. So here you're going to include the job titles that you want. And here you're going to exclude the job titles that you don't want. This thing is relevant when, for example, you want to contact owners of companies. So you add owner here. And you don't want the product owner, because if you add owner here, you're going to have all of the product owners. So it makes sense in that case. Here we have include people with similar titles. I always uncheck this box because it's just going to add a bunch of job titles that you don't want. Here you also have management level and departments. That's not something that we use because we prefer to pick exactly the job titles that we want, but something that you can use, but I don't necessarily recommend it. Then we have location, so pretty straightforward. You can either add the location of the contact or of the company. If you want to contact all of the companies in the US, but you don't care where the person is living, that's the location that they have on their LinkedIn account, by the way, then you can add the location for account. If you want all of the people that are living in the US and you don't care about in which company they work and like the location of the company, then you add the location for the contact. And of course, you can also exclude location. So if you want all of the companies in the US or all of the contacts in the US, but you don't want California, for example, or Texas, you can do it here. By the way, if you'd rather have my team build and run the entire outbound system for you, just hit the first link in the description to book a call with me. I'll show you what this will look like if we run it for you. All right, back to the video. Then we have employee count. So you have predefined range. Most of the times you're going to use that. Or you have custom range. If you want, for example, all companies above 30 employees, you can do it like that. Then we have industry and keywords. So here you can pick the industries that you want to target. Here you can exclude the industries. And here you can add company keywords. So you can add industries, remove industries, here company keywords, and exclude keywords. But I'm going to come back to this part later because that's one of the main filters in Apollo that you need to master. Then you have buying intent. That's not something that we personally use, but I know that there are some companies that are using that. I won't really be able to explain in detail because we've never really used it. We tried a bit, but I don't think it really makes sense, especially when you want volume, and we're mainly doing volume. So here it doesn't necessarily make sense in our case, but you can explore that. Then we have email status. So you have safe to send, send with caution. So here it's verified, unqualified, and do not send, it's unavailable, and update required. So personally, we don't necessarily care about that because when Apollo is telling you that it's a verified email, many times it's not verified. So you can't contact them directly. You need another layer of verification using tools like Debounce, Million Verifier, Never Bounce, etc. So don't trust Apollo when they're telling you that it's a verified email. Also, when it's unavailable, when Apollo doesn't have the email, also it's not a problem because you can use other tools to be able to enrich the email. So basically with the company name, the company domain and first name and last name, you can find the email address of the contact. So if you have a large target audience, you can directly click on verified. It will be easier. You don't need to do any other enrichment. And you're going to be able to export that, verify the emails, and then add in your campaign directly. But if you have a small target audience and you want to get the most of every lead, then don't select anything. And then later you will need to do some enrichment because you will be able to get maybe like 10 to 30% more of your list. So most of the time, it makes sense to not select anything here. Then you have scores. Again, that's not something that we necessarily use. Maybe it makes sense in some cases, but we tried and we didn't necessarily see any value in this filter, so we just don't use it. Then you have territories. So it's a bit like Persona. You can create territories. Mainly, I think it's the location. We don't necessarily use it. We prefer directly add the location. So this one doesn't necessarily make sense in most cases. Then we have technologies. So this one is very useful as well. For example, if you're training companies with Salesforce, you can add here Salesforce and you will have all of the companies that are using Salesforce. So it's a bit like Built With. So if you're familiar with Built With, that's the same, but it's integrated in Apollo. Then we have revenue. So it's a filter that we never ever used because we noticed that it's not accurate at all. And so if we want to contact companies that are making a certain revenue, we add employee count, but never revenue. Then we have funding. So pretty straightforward. You have here the companies, the people that are in companies that raised funds. You can have by date as well. That's something that we sometimes use, but not very often. Then we have job postings. So here you can target companies that are currently hiring for a certain job. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure Apollo is the best for that. There are other platforms to do it, but it's a filter that they have as well. Then we have signals. Again, it's a bit like buying intent. We never really use it. You can a bit play with it and see if it makes sense for you, but most of the times it doesn't make any sense. Another one that we like is time in current role. So if you want to contact, for example, business owners that are running their companies for 10 plus years, you can do it here directly. So you have time in current role and you have total years of experience. So here you have other filters. We don't use any of them. You have long wages, funded year, etc. You can play with it, but most of the times you're probably not going to use them. Here it's if you run campaigns using Apollo, then maybe it can be useful. Here you have others, but you will never use them. So here you just have total year of experience that you're sometimes going to use, and that's it. Then you will use only the one that I showed you here. So there are two filters that you really need to master. You have job titles and industry and keywords. The others are pretty straightforward. You add the location, you add the range that you want for the employee count. They're very easy to master. Job titles and industry and keywords, and mainly industry and keywords, they're pretty tough to master. So I'm going to detail that now. So for job titles, it's very important to know who you want to contact because you want to avoid contacting people that are not qualified for your offer, and you want to avoid missing out on leads that are qualified. So I have this document here with a bunch of job titles. Here I have the main decision makers, the decision makers in marketing. Here I have a lot more. Decision makers in operations, technology, HR, customer support, etc. So for example, if I want all of the decision makers in operations, I can just copy that, paste them in Apollo directly, and then you have all of them appearing here. So I'm going to share this document in the description so you can use it. But the best way to select job titles is to ask GPT. So you tell him exactly what you do, what you offer, and you ask him what are the best job titles to contact if I do cold outreach, and ask him to give them by order of importance and also by company size. Because, for example, if you need to target the CEO, probably it will be from 10 employees to 200 employees. Above that, you will need to contact someone else. So ask him that as well. So the second filter that you need to master is industry and keywords. That's where you're going to spend most of your time. So here, Apollo is giving you the list of all of the industries they have on their platform. So I think you have 150 in total. Same as for job titles, the best way to start is to give your offer to GPT, give him this list. You can just copy paste that and ask which industry is the most relevant for my offer. I mean, if you already know who to target, then it's great. If you're unsure, ask him directly. If you're only targeting B2B companies, you can give him this list, ask which industry is more B2B, and also give me a percentage, because some industries are 95% B2B, 5% B2C. For others, it's a bit more complicated. For others, it's more like 60% B2B, 40% B2C. So if you want only to contact B2B companies, then it would be difficult to add this industry. But sometimes adding industries is not the best way to target your target audience. So that's why you also have company keywords. So company keyword is the hardest to master because you will need a lot of A/B testing. You will need to add a company keyword, then go on page 20 or page 50 and check if leads are qualified. If they're not, sometimes you need to add another keyword, like to replace it, or sometimes you need just to exclude keywords. So I'm going to give you an example for companies. So if you want to target corporate training companies, for example, here you don't have corporate training. You have education management, you have e-learning, and you can add others as well. But here you have a bunch of companies that are not all in corporate training. So then that's where you're going to add the company keyword. So here I can put corporate training. You see, we went from 300,000 companies to only 5,000 companies. So you will probably need to add a lot more company keywords, like just maybe training. Maybe you'll need to add training here. Maybe that's a bit too wide, because here now you can see you have 65,000 companies. But then you can exclude keywords. If you don't want fitness training, for example, here you can remove fitness. And here also you have types of keywords. So you have the keyword in the company name, social media tag, social media description, and SEO description. So they're all different. In general, I just add all of them. So here you will need to play a lot and see what is best for your target audience. In general, in the first pages, you have the most qualified leads. So don't make a decision based on the first page. Go on page 20, 50 and see if you still have qualified leads. If you don't have qualified leads, then you can go here in keywords and see why they're not qualified. For example, here you have luxury. You don't want the keyword luxury. Maybe it doesn't make sense. And so here you're going to add luxury. So it can take some time, but if you want a qualified lead list, that's what you need to do. So I came back in people. As you can see, I still have my company filters with training, and I've added the job title founder just for the test. So as you can see, I have 15,800 leads in total, net new 14.4K, and saved 1.5K. So if I want, I can directly export the saved leads, but in your case, you won't have anything saved. So you will need to start in net new. And so if you're not in the enterprise plan of Apollo, you can only save 100 leads at a time. So you'll need to add 100 here, apply, save, add in a list here, and then save. Then you refresh the page and you do it again. So it can be a bit time consuming. So either you do it like if you want 4,000 leads, you do it 40 times, or you can use tool like if you're using a MacBook, tools like Keysmith to be able to automate. So when it's sourcing leads, you won't be able to use your laptop, but at least it's going to save leads for you. So here it's very simple to create an automation. You will just click here, click on save, etc., refresh, and add some time in the middle. It's very easy to set up. There are other ways to save leads on Apollo, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'll create other videos explaining in detail how to do it in a more efficient way. So that's how we use Apollo to build lead lists. Now, if you want us to build and run the entire outbound system for you, so you can just focus on closing deals, just hit the first button, the first link in the description to book a call with me. And if you found this helpful, just hit subscribe. I'll post more videos around outbound. See you in the next one, and thank you for watching.